The mining moon of Verath Prime was quiet except for the low hum of drills beneath its black rock surface. The alien workers moved slowly under the pale orange sky, their long shadows stretching across the jagged ground. Far away from the mines, at the old observatory, Dr. Karen adjusted the ancient viewing lenses. She had spent years searching for proof that the old stories were real, but each day ended with nothing more than faint star maps and silence. Her colleagues called her obsessed, chasing ghosts from forgotten myths. For generations, the galaxy had spoken of a species called humans. They were described in the oldest recordings, short-lived, fragile, yet impossible to defeat. The stories painted them as dangerous and unpredictable, a force that could not be controlled. But to the modern council, they were nothing but bedtime tales told to entertain hatchlings. No one believed they had ever existed. Still, Karen kept looking. On that evening, as the cold winds scraped across the dome, a cargo shuttle arrived from the far asteroid fields. Its crew brought strange metallic fragments they had found embedded in a shattered rock. The pieces were dense, heavier than any known alloy, and marked with faint, deliberate lines, almost like letters. Karen's hands trembled as she held one under the scanner. The symbols matched those found in ancient war relics thought to be millions of years old. Her mind raced. If these markings were truly human, it meant the species had once been here, in this part of space. But why had they vanished? And why now, after so long, were traces of them appearing again? She brought her findings before the council the next day. Rows of alien officials, each wrapped in ceremonial robes, listened with half-closed eyes. They laughed politely, some shaking their heads, others muttering about her wasting resources. The speaker of the council, a towering figure with crystalline skin, said, "Legends have no place in matters of state, Dr. Karen. Focus on the present, not on ghosts." Karen left the chamber with her jaw clenched. She had seen their reaction before: dismissal, mockery, disbelief. But this time felt different. The fragments had weight, age, and proof in their composition. She could not ignore them. She returned to her observatory that night, the cold air stinging her eyes, and began scanning the outer system again. Hours passed. The stars remained still until her screen flickered with faint movement at the edge of the sector. At first, she thought it was a sensor error. The shapes were small, moving in unison, almost too far to detect. She adjusted the filters, magnifying the image. Her heart pounded. There were at least 20 objects, gliding silently in a formation no natural debris would take. Their trajectories were perfect, not random like asteroids. She quickly cross-checked the motion patterns against every known alien vessel. Nothing matched. A low alarm sounded from the communications console. Faint bursts of energy rippled through the system's static, a whisper hidden in the noise of the stars. She filtered the signal, and her screen lit up with strange, pulsing sequences. They were short, sharp, and deliberate, following a rhythm she had never seen before. Then, like a sudden flash in her mind, she recognized the pattern. In her research on the myths, she had come across old, untranslated signal archives. They were said to be war communications from the time when humans roamed the galaxy. The bursts matched perfectly. Each pause, each pulse carried the same signature. Her hands shook as she recorded the data, staring at the screen. This was not just debris or unregistered ships. Someone was sending human-coded messages from the dark beyond their borders. She wanted to send an alert to the council, but she stopped herself. They would ignore her, maybe even strip her of her research post for stirring panic. She needed more proof. She turned her long-range sensors toward the source of the signal. The objects were closer now, moving with purpose toward inhabited space. As the night deepened, Karen felt a strange unease settle over her. The old stories from her youth came back to her, tales of humans arriving without warning, of their fleets surrounding entire worlds, of their ability to strike before anyone could react. She had never truly believed them. Now, with her own eyes, she was watching something move in the cold darkness, something that carried the same signature as those ancient predators. She leaned forward, eyes locked on the flickering display, the sound of the coded pulses echoing in the control room. The air seemed colder. For the first time, the myths felt real, and in that moment, she understood the terrible possibility. The humans were not extinct. They were out there, and they were coming closer. Freight convoys began to vanish one after another. Ships that had been scheduled to arrive with supplies simply never showed up. There were no distress calls, no final transmissions, only silence. The few rescue patrols that went searching found nothing but drifting fragments of metal, some scorched and twisted, others sliced clean as if by invisible blades. The energy readings from these wrecks were unlike anything in recorded history. The frequencies did not match pirate weaponry, nor did they resemble the arsenal of any known military force. Rumors began to spread in the trade routes. Pilots whispered in low voices about dark shapes that followed them in the void, keeping their distance, never answering hails. Some spoke of sudden flashes of light behind their ships, followed by systems going dead. Most of these stories were dismissed as stress-induced hallucinations or exaggerated tales to impress dockside crowds, but the fear was real. The name human began to slip into conversations again, like a curse too dangerous to speak loudly. Dr. Karen buried herself in her research, listening to long-range frequencies at all hours. It was during one of these lonely nights that she caught something again, short bursts of sound buried deep in the static. She slowed them down, ran them through her translation archives, and confirmed her suspicion. The rhythm, the structure, the pauses, they were the same ancient war codes she had discovered earlier. Her breath caught. These were not random signals, they were deliberate transmissions, sent from somewhere far beyond the edge of mapped space. She went to the military command center to share her findings. Rows of uniformed officers listened, their expressions growing impatient. "We are dealing with smugglers or unknown raiders," one of them said sharply. "There is no proof of anything else." Another officer leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Even if humans were real, they are gone. You are chasing shadows." Karen tried to explain that the patterns matched perfectly with the old archives, that no modern species used such sequences. But they waved her off, saying their time could not be wasted on legends. 2 days later, the Outer Defense Network picked up faint readings. Dozens of small blips, just like the ones Karen had tracked before, moving slowly into the system. At first, the operators thought it was an asteroid cluster. Then they saw how perfectly the objects stayed in formation. Asteroids did not glide in military precision. The blips ignored warning beacons, altered course around debris, and maintained speed as they entered the monitoring zone. In the capital city, the council convened an emergency meeting. They ordered a fleet of patrol craft to intercept and identify the intruders. The plan was to approach cautiously and demand their origin and purpose. The patrol ships launched in tight formation, disappearing into the blackness. Hours passed with no response from them. Then a single transmission crackled through, garbled, distorted, but carrying a single word before the signal died: humans. The message sent a ripple of unease through the system. Civilian news channels broke the story, though officials tried to contain it. They claimed the missing ships were victims of an accident, but people did not believe them. Panic buying began in the markets, and civilians started preparing their escape vessels. Karen sat in her observatory, watching the objects move closer every hour. She studied their patterns and realized something alarming. They were avoiding detection grids, slipping between known scanning zones as if they had the system's entire defense map memorized. It was impossible unless they had studied it long before now, or had obtained the information from someone inside. Late one night, while she was tracking the signals, her screen flashed with a sharp, deliberate pulse. It was a message, clear and intentional, aimed directly at her frequency. The code was human, but the translation came out in her own language. "We are coming." Her pulse quickened, fear and curiosity twisting together in her chest. Whoever these beings were, they were not hiding anymore. She tried to contact the council again, but they were already overwhelmed with reports from the frontier colonies. More ships had gone missing, and some planets were reporting strange lights in their upper atmosphere before losing all communications. The scale of the disappearances was growing too quickly to be dismissed. Still, officials avoided naming the enemy, afraid of what the word might do to public morale. The rumors had already spread too far. In crowded bars, in dim mining tunnels, in bustling trade ports, the whispers were the same. Humans were real, and they were moving in from the dark. No one knew what they wanted, only that they were advancing, unstoppable and silent. Karen knew it was only a matter of time before the galaxy's greatest myth stepped fully into the light. Without warning, the patrol station near the asteroid belt erupted into chaos. The first explosion lit up the black sky like a second sun, turning drifting rocks into glowing fragments. The station's alarms wailed, and its defense guns tried to lock onto the attackers, but the enemy ships moved too fast. They were small and sharp-edged, built for speed and precision. They came out of the void without a single signal, their dark hulls swallowing the light until they fired. The blasts tore through shields that had been considered impenetrable. The alien crew shouted commands, scrambling to respond, but each time they aimed, the attackers had already vanished from their scopes. In less than 5 minutes, the station's main reactor was hit. A wave of light and debris shot outward, leaving nothing but a smoking skeleton of metal hanging in the dark. Nearby monitoring satellites caught glimpses of the attackers. Their ships bore no alien symbols, like no known identification codes, only matte black surfaces broken by streaks of glowing heat as they fired. Their formations were perfect, their maneuvers so sharp that even the fastest interceptor crafts could not keep up. When the satellite feeds reached the capital, military analysts froze in disbelief. The ship designs matched nothing in their databases, except for one dusty, ancient file in the Forbidden Archives labeled Human Vessels. The military's reaction was immediate. War alerts spread across the system. The Council ordered civilians to stay indoors, all traffic in space to halt, and every available defense craft to prepare for engagement. But fear had already spread faster than any official command. In the lower districts of the city, people packed their belongings into small escape pods, ready to flee anywhere away from the incoming threat. On the news channels, the footage of the attack played on repeat. Experts debated endlessly, some still insisting the ships were just advanced raider craft from rival systems. But the image of their sleek, aggressive shapes and the deadly precision of their strikes was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in living memory. The old word began to appear on every broadcast, every whisper, every fearful conversation: humans. Dr. Karen was in her observatory when she saw the official military announcement. It was short, almost cold. Human vessels confirmed. The words made her chest tighten. For years, she had been mocked for chasing the myth, and now the proof had arrived in the most violent way possible. She sent message after message to the Council, begging them to attempt communication before escalating the conflict further, but the military command shut her out completely. Their response was the same: you cannot negotiate with myths. In the hours that followed, more attacks came. A deep space fuel depot was destroyed, leaving several fleets stranded. Communication hubs along the frontier went dark, their signals cut as cleanly as if someone had severed a wire. The humans were not just attacking, they were dismantling the system's ability to respond. Witnesses began to emerge from the few ships that had survived encounters. They described the human vessels as ghost-like, appearing without warning, delivering precise strikes, then vanishing into the black. One freighter captain swore that the humans never fired first at unarmed ships, but the moment a defensive weapon came online, they responded with overwhelming force. It was as if they had rules that no one understood. By the third day of attacks, the Council was split. Some demanded surrender without resistance, believing the humans too powerful to fight. Others called for the largest counterstrike in history, certain that overwhelming numbers could crush the invaders. But even as they argued, the human fleets continued to advance, untouched and unchallenged in their path. In her private study, Karen played back the recordings of the human code signals she had intercepted earlier. Now that the attacks had begun, the meaning of those codes seemed even more urgent. She noticed something strange. The patterns were not random orders. They were coordinates, moving from the outer rim toward the heart of the system. The humans were not scattering their attacks. They were moving in a straight, deliberate line toward a single destination. She realized with a chill that if their course continued, they would reach the capital within days. And if the myths were true, the humans would not come to negotiate once they arrived. They would come to claim. The cargo hauler that limped into Verath Prime's docking bay looked like it had survived the end of the universe. Its hull was scarred with deep burns, whole sections were missing, and one of its engines was barely holding together with emergency clamps. When the airlock doors opened, a group of exhausted alien crew stumbled out, their skin pale and eyes wide as if they had seen something no one should. The captain, a reptilian veteran with scales faded from years of travel, demanded to speak to someone in authority. His voice was hoarse, his claws trembling slightly as he recounted what had happened. They had been hauling cargo through a quiet trade route when the shadows appeared. Black shapes, silent and fast, surrounded them without a single warning. The crew expected to die instantly, but the strange ships only circled. It was as if they were inspecting the hauler. Then, a deep voice crackled through their comms in a language none of them knew. The captain swore that the attackers were human. He had seen them, figures in black armor, faces hidden behind mirrored visors, moving with the precision of soldiers who had fought 1,000 battles. He claimed they boarded briefly, scanned the ship, and then left without harming the crew or the cargo. The only damage to the hauler came later, when automated defense drones mistook them for enemies and fired. The captain's story shook everyone in the room. Until now, no one had spoken of actually seeing a human in the flesh. From the hauler's cargo hold, they brought out strange devices taken from the wreckage of another ship the humans had destroyed. The technology was unlike anything in the Council's archives, dense, compact, and built from alloys that resisted every cutting tool. Even the scanning beams bounced off without giving a proper reading. Along the edges of the devices were markings in sharp, angular patterns that Karen immediately recognized. They were the same symbols she had studied for years, identical to those on the ancient fragments she had found earlier. One device was particularly odd, a rectangular block that emitted a low hum, almost like a heartbeat. When Karen connected it to her decoding system, it projected a flickering map into the air. The stars shifted and rearranged until a set of coordinates glowed bright red. She quickly checked the system's records. The location was far beyond the galactic rim, deep in a dead zone where no life was supposed to exist. For centuries, the area had been marked as dangerous and unexplored. Her thoughts spun. If the humans were coming from there, then they had been hiding in the dark all this time by waiting for the right moment to return. She felt a mix of fear and fascination. Here was proof of where they might be based. Maybe even a way to understand their purpose. But when she presented her findings to the military council, they dismissed the idea of sending an exploration team. They argued it was a trap, that going there would risk valuable ships they could not afford to lose. Outside the council chambers, the city was tense. People avoided speaking loudly in public. The spaceport was flooded with civilians trying to secure passage to safer systems, though no one could say where safe really was anymore. News feeds replayed the captain's testimony, his voice shaking as he described the humans' armor and cold efficiency. Some viewers called him a liar, claiming he was making up the story to gain attention. But others believed every word, their fear growing with each retelling. Karen spent that night in her observatory, staring at the coordinates hovering in the air from the strange device. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was the key to everything. The humans were not acting like mindless conquerors. They had a plan, and whatever lay in that dead zone was part of it. She thought about the old myths, the humans who had vanished not because they were defeated, but because they had chosen to disappear. She also thought about the captain's description of how they had spared his crew. That detail stood out. If they were truly as ruthless as the legends claimed, why leave witnesses alive? Unless they wanted the witnesses to speak. Unless this was part of their strategy, to let fear spread before they made their full move. The thought made her skin crawl. By morning, she had made her decision. If the council refused to investigate, she would find her own way to reach those coordinates. The myths had stepped out of history and into the present, and she needed to see for herself where they had been hiding and why they had chosen this moment to strike. Karen managed to join a small expedition heading toward the edge of known space. The official mission was to chart new mineral fields, but she had convinced the captain to take a detour toward the coordinates from the strange human device. The crew was a mix of explorers, smugglers, and hired guards, none of whom liked the idea of venturing into the dead zone. Rumors said that ships entering it never came back. The space there was colder, darker, and filled with strange radiation that warped sensors. As they crossed the last mapped star system, the usual chatter on the comms grew quiet. The stars ahead looked dimmer, their lights swallowed by a heavy black emptiness. Navigation screens flickered as if the void itself was resisting being measured. The captain ordered all weapons ready, but kept the shields at full strength. Everyone knew they were heading into dangerous territory, but no one could agree on what kind of danger it would be. Hours into the dead zone, they began to find them, wrecks drifting slowly through the darkness. The first was a massive warship, its hull ripped open like a tin can. Despite its age, parts of it still glowed faintly from internal power. The design was unmistakably human, sharp angles, layered armor, and weapon mounts that looked like they could tear planets apart. As they approached, an automated turret turned toward them. It powered up, scanning their ship, then went silent again as if deciding they were not worth firing on. The deeper they went, the more wrecks they saw. Some were so old they were coated in space dust thicker than armor plates. Others looked like they had been abandoned only recently, with lights still flickering inside empty corridors. Karen studied every one, trying to piece together the history. These ships had fought wars with species she didn't even recognize. There were claw marks on the hulls, acid burns, and massive impact craters from weapons she had never seen before. Then, just beyond a field of shattered debris, they saw it. A human warship still intact, floating alone like a predator waiting for prey. Its surface was scarred but whole, and its engine core glowed with steady power. The ship was huge, dwarfing theirs by at least 10 times. No signal came from it, no sign of life, but its guns slowly tracked their movement. The crew hesitated, unsure whether to approach or flee. The captain looked at Karen, his eyes sharp. "This is your mission," he said. "If you want to see what's inside, now is the time." They moved closer, every sensor on high alert. As they came within range, a sudden blast of static filled the comms. A voice spoke, deep and harsh, in a language Karen had studied for years but never heard spoken aloud. Her translation device worked quickly, and the words appeared on the console, "Identify yourself." The crew froze. This was no automated greeting. Someone, alive, was speaking from inside that ship. The captain sent a cautious reply, giving their ship's name and peaceful intentions. There was a long silence before the voice spoke again, this time in perfectly clear galactic standard. "Dock and board, no weapons." The order left no room for negotiation. Against the protests of several crew members, Karen insisted they follow the instructions. She felt an almost magnetic pull toward the ship, as if the answers to every question she had chased her whole life were just beyond its sealed airlock. They maneuvered into position, the docking clamps locking onto the warship with a deep metallic echo that reverberated through their hull. The airlock door slid open and cold, stale air rushed into their corridor. The lighting inside the human vessel was dim, casting long shadows over the steel walls. As they stepped inside, their boots clicked against the metal floor. The corridors were wide, lined with old banners that bore symbols in the same sharp script Karen had seen on relics. They were met by figures in black armor, their visors reflecting the dim lights. Each one stood perfectly still, weapons slung but ready. One of them stepped forward, taller and broader than any alien on the expedition. He studied them in silence before speaking, his voice a low growl. "You have come far. That means you have questions." Karen swallowed hard. She could barely find her voice. "We thought you were gone," she said. "We thought you were only a story." The armored figure tilted his head slightly. "We are a story," he replied. "One that was never finished." Inside the massive warship, the air was cold and heavy, carrying the faint smell of metal and oil. The armored humans led Karen and the small expedition crew through long corridors lit by dim strips of white light. Every surface looked solid and functional, built for war rather than beauty. There were no windows, only bulkheads covered in strange panels and control screens showing maps of space Karen did not recognize. The silence was deep, broken only by the echo of their footsteps. They entered a large chamber filled with consoles and old-style command chairs. In the center stood a man without a helmet, his face lean and sharp, hair streaked with gray but eyes alert and intense. He looked at Karen with the kind of focus that made her feel as if he could see through every thought in her mind. "You are not afraid," he said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of command. She hesitated before answering. "I've been searching for proof of you my whole life. Now you're here." The man gave a small, almost humorless smile. "We have always been here, waiting." He explained that their fleet had gone into deep stasis centuries ago, hidden far beyond the galactic rim after a catastrophic war. The galaxy at that time had been united against humanity, fearing their rapid expansion and unpredictable nature. Facing extinction, the humans had made a choice: disappear until the other civilizations had weakened themselves through conflict and division. Karen listened as he spoke of their return being planned for generations. They had observed the galaxy from the shadows, watching alliances crumble, borders shrink, and fleets grow weaker. Now, with most major powers distracted by internal disputes, they judged the time right to emerge. "We are not here for trade," he said firmly. "We are here to reclaim what was taken. We will not ask for it. We will take it." One of the guards stepped forward and placed a small object on the table in front of her, a worn piece of metal shaped like a badge. It bore the same angular markings she had seen on relics. "Every soldier here carries one," the commander explained. "They are reminders of what was lost and why we fight." Karen touched it, feeling the deep grooves under her fingertips. She asked why they had spared the cargo hauler captain and his crew. The commander's eyes narrowed slightly. "We are not here to kill for sport. We destroy threats. We leave the rest to spread the truth of our return. Fear is a weapon. It softens the enemy before the first real strike." His words sent a chill through her. They were not acting without thought. Every move was calculated. He spoke of the old human territories, worlds now ruled by other species, and how those planets would be the first to fall. The warships already moving through alien space were the vanguard, clearing paths for the main fleet still hidden in the dead zone. Once the main force arrived, no system in their path would stand for long. Karen tried to speak of peace, of the possibility of coexistence, but the commander's tone grew harder. "We do not coexist with those who tried to erase us. You call us myths because you wanted to forget, but we remember everything. The war never ended. It only paused." The humans offered to return her and her crew alive, but only if they delivered a message to the Council. Humanity was no longer a ghost in the archives. They had returned to finish the story. A recording was given to her, sealed and encrypted so that no one could alter it. She didn't have to guess what it contained. Her instincts told her it would be both a warning and a declaration of war. As the meeting ended, she was escorted back to her ship. Walking through the warship's corridors again, she noticed details she had missed before: weapons quietly tracking targets, crew members in training drills, maintenance drones repairing armor plating. The entire ship felt alive, like a predator preparing to strike. When the docking clamps released, she looked back at the human vessel floating in the darkness. It didn't move, didn't chase, but she could feel its presence as if it were watching her leave. She understood now that the attacks so far were only the beginning. The humans had waited for centuries, and they would not stop until they had reshaped the galaxy in their image. The first large-scale strikes began without warning. Human fleets appeared over key alien worlds, not from hyperspace gates or known jump lanes, but from hidden approaches no one had mapped. Their ships cut through orbital defenses in minutes, targeting power plants, communication hubs, and shipyards before moving on. Entire planets were left powerless, their skies lit by burning wrecks falling through the atmosphere. The speed of the attacks left no time for proper evacuations. On the Council's central world, leaders shouted over one another in emergency sessions. Reports from the frontier spoke of cities leveled in hours, fleets destroyed before they could even form a battle line. No alien navy could match the humans' precision. Every counterattack failed. It was as if the humans knew exactly where their enemies' weaknesses were before the fighting even began. Some whispered that they had been studying alien strategies for centuries, waiting for this exact moment. Karen found herself caught between two worlds. She had been sent back to deliver the human message, but the Council had locked it away, fearing the panic it would cause. She argued that hiding the truth would not stop the humans, it would only make the galaxy less prepared. Few listened. Many leaders still believed they could negotiate, but Karen knew the humans had no interest in such talks, not until they had proven their dominance. As the war spread, patterns in the attacks became clear. The humans were not striking randomly. They moved in deliberate waves, each strike bringing them closer to the galactic core. They avoided destroying civilian populations unless provoked, focusing instead on dismantling the ability to resist. But when resistance came, they responded with overwhelming force, leaving nothing but silent ruins behind. Karen was sent with a small diplomatic envoy to a recently attacked border world, hoping to reassure the population and rally defenses. What she found instead were survivors in shock, their homes still smoking, their ships nothing but twisted metal. A local commander told her in a hollow voice that the humans had landed troops, black armored soldiers who moved like shadows and cleared entire defense posts without losing a single fighter. They had said only one thing before leaving: "Tell your leaders the tide has returned." Back in the capital, the military high command was desperate. They threw together a coalition fleet from dozens of systems, the largest seen in generations, and sent it to intercept the humans at a narrow pass between nebulae. The plan was to use sheer numbers to crush the invaders. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. The coalition fleet was torn apart, their formations shattered by tactics no alien admiral could anticipate. The survivors fled in all directions, carrying tales of human ships that seemed to be everywhere at once. Karen received word from contacts on the outer colonies that resistance groups were already surrendering before the humans even arrived. Fear alone was breaking the galaxy apart. She met again with the same human commander aboard a captured relay station. He was calm, almost polite, as he told her that the war was not about revenge alone, it was about survival. "We are surrounded by species who will unite to destroy us if we give them time," he said. "So we strike before they remember how to stand together." She wanted to argue, but the truth was impossible to ignore. The human strategy was working. Every victory made the next easier. Every surrender saved them resources for the battles ahead. The galaxy's greatest myth had become its most unstoppable reality. By the time Karen returned to the capital again, human fleets had moved so close that the glow of their engines could be seen from the night side of the planet. The council still debated in their great hall, but the sound of distant explosions could already be heard in the skies above. The myths were no longer coming. They were here. The sky above Verath Prime burned with streaks of fire as ships fell through the atmosphere. Some were alien defense craft, others were human strike vessels that had taken heavy damage but still fought until the last moment. The sound of distant detonations rolled across the horizon like endless thunder. Karen stood in the observatory watching the chaos unfold, her fingers gripping the console until her knuckles ached. The humans had reached the heart of the system, and nothing stood in their way now. She sent her transmission into the void, routing it through every relay station still active. Her voice was steady, though her chest felt tight. She did not beg for mercy or try to paint the humans as pure monsters. She told the truth, how they had survived the centuries, how they had planned this return, and how they saw the galaxy not as a collection of allies or enemies, but as a board on which only the strongest could survive. She warned that resisting blindly would lead to destruction, but surrendering without thought would erase entire cultures. Across the stars, her message reached worlds already under siege. Some listened and laid down their weapons, raising white signals in their skies. The humans spared those planets, taking control of infrastructure and resources without bloodshed. Others chose to fight, unwilling to give up their freedom. Those worlds burned in days. Their cities turned into black craters, their survivors scattered. The old belief that humans were simply a legend had vanished completely. No one doubted now. They were real, they were powerful, and they were here to stay. Karen's transmission became the most shared piece of communication in living memory. Some saw her as a traitor for speaking without condemning the humans outright. Others called her a hero for giving people the chance to survive. The council tried to discredit her, but their influence was collapsing with every world that fell. From the outer rim to the core systems, the humans' reputation grew into something larger than fear. It became inevitability. Alien leaders began sending envoys directly to human commanders, offering alliances, resources, and even territory in exchange for protection. The humans accepted only some, rejecting others without explanation. Their strategy remained their own, impossible to predict. Karen was invited once more to meet the human commander, this time in the capital itself, now under their control. The city's grand towers still stood, but human banners hung from them, their black and silver designs stark against the alien skyline. The commander greeted her as if they were old allies. He told her the war was far from over. There were still powers that would resist, still battles to fight. But the balance of the galaxy had already shifted. "The myths are over," he said. "From now on, they will call us history." As she left the meeting, Karen looked out over the city. Human soldiers patrolled alongside alien guards who had once sworn to keep them out. Merchants had already reopened markets, trading goods under the watchful eyes of the new rulers. Life was continuing, reshaped but unbroken. She realized that the humans had not just come to conquer, they had come to stay and build. In the months that followed, resistance dwindled. The humans rebuilt the worlds they had taken, installing their own systems of law and order. Some species adapted quickly, finding opportunity in the new rule. Others plotted quietly, waiting for a chance to push them back. Karen continued her work, traveling between systems, speaking to leaders and civilians alike. She told them the same thing each time. The humans were not gods, and they were not demons. They were survivors, forged in fire, and they would not disappear again. Her final broadcast closed with a single warning, her voice steady but heavy with meaning. "The myths have returned, and they will shape our future. Whether we live under them in peace or die fighting them is the choice each world must make." Across the galaxy, her words echoed, carried on every signal wave. The legend of humanity was no longer a story told in the dark. It was the light and the shadow that now ruled the stars.